8 weeks of the NFL season, and as always, given it is Thursday, we are going through our weekly power rankings, ranking all 32 teams from 1 to 32. But before we get into the video, I want to again ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Thursday and Saturday all year long. Now, let's get back to the video. Starting out with our bottom 12 teams, this is pretty much the same as it has been in past weeks, with the lone exception being the Dallas Cowboys dropping from number 17 to number 21 after losing to the 49ers. I didn't want to maybe drop them this much, but the Cowboys have frankly been bad. They have some bad losses on the season. They have a losing record. There were quite a number of teams, especially in that mid-tier from about 20 to 16, that all won or played very competitive games against top teams. And so it really did just feel like the Cowboys needed to fall down, given it's been a number of weeks since they've even won a football game, because they lost to the 49ers, the Lions, and had their bye week in between. I acknowledge 49ers and Lions are good, but the Cowboys still belong here at number 21 based on how they've played recently. You also have some pretty big droppers in teams like the Saints and the Jets, who have moved into the bottom 5 teams overall because they just have not been good as of late. The Jets, their only 2 wins are against the Patriots and the Titans, 2 pretty bad wins. And they just lost to the Patriots this past week, even after getting Hassan Reddick back and trading for Devontae Adams. And if this team cannot beat the Patriots when they were supposed to be good coming into the season, and they added 2 all-pro worthy players, it shows there's just a culture issue here, and this team is bad. As for the Saints, they have literally not won a game since week 2 of the NFL season. They have been tanking since. They have injuries all over the place. They haven't really been close in the games they have played. And so they belong down here at number 30. On the flip side, the Dolphins, in spite of loss to the Cardinals, are moving up a couple of spots because they actually look competent with Tua back. And as Tua gets reintegrated and guys like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert start to improve their output because Tua just allows apparently everybody to be better, then the Dolphins should continue to rise in these power rankings, but they still only have 2 wins. It's tough to put them any higher than 24th on this list. And the other rising team in this area is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns moved to 23 after being 29 last week, primarily because Jameis Winston actually makes this team competent looking. For the first time this season, the Browns cleared 20 points. That's all they had gotten in any previous game. 20. It's insane how bad this offense was. And the defense is still the same defense we remember from previous seasons. But this team actually put up points against the Baltimore Ravens. Their defense still held serve, and they won that game thanks to Jameis Winston and a much improved offense for the Browns. And so even though they've lost Amari Cooper, Cedric Tillman looks good, David Njoku looks good, Nick Chubb is back, and the Browns are going to be moving up. This is no longer a pushover team that you want to constantly bet against. You got to trust that the Browns are still the team they were last year, and it was Deshaun Watson and no one else that was the problem. Moving on to our middle 10 teams, we really have a sea of red and orange looking at this. A couple of blue colors in the 20 and 19 slot, but other than that, it really is some warm sun colors. I don't know why, that's just how it worked out. Either way, the biggest riser in this part of the list is the LA Rams. They looked so much better on Thursday Night Football. They got Puka Nacua back, who was an absolute beast. They got Cooper Kupp back, who was less beastly, but still productive. The offense looked much better. They beat a very good Vikings team who was 5-1, now 5-2. And so the Rams definitely belong to be a little bit higher. Yeah, their record still isn't great. They're 3-4, but they're getting guys back healthy. They're looking a lot better, and they absolutely belong in this tier and might continue to climb if they can put together some wins back-to-back now that they are a little bit healthier. On the flip side, we have a pretty big faller in the Cincinnati Bengals, falling to number 18 from number 11. And yes, they lost to the Eagles, who haven't shown up on this list, which shows that they are a top 10 team, at least in my estimation. But the Bengals are now 3-5. They are not in good shape. While the Bengals are a decent team on paper and have been a bit better since, September ended, they are still in a really bad position because it seems like if T. Higgins or Jamar Chase are not there, like this past week where T. Higgins missed, then the Bengals offense just can't really do anything, and their defense is atrocious and let the Philadelphia Eagles put up 37 points on them. And so it's tough to imagine the Bengals doing enough to maintain a good enough record to make the playoffs. Last year, it took a 10-7 record to make the playoffs out of the AFC. I mean, maybe it's 9-8, but let's even say it's 10-7. That means that the Bengals need to go 7-2 for the duration of the season, and that includes a lot of games in division against teams like the Ravens, the Steelers. They're going to have another game against the Browns. It's not going to be an easy run for the Bengals, and so I'm dropping them down to 18 because that was must-win football for them, and they weren't even close. Now moving into our top 10, we have the Philadelphia Eagles staying at number 10 after last week. I'll acknowledge this is a little bit lower than what you'll find on a lot of power rankings. The team is 5-2. They have a solid record, but I'm still just not sold on this Eagles team. Some of those wins have been ugly. And yes, it was a good win against the Cincinnati Bengals this past week. But we've seen the Bengals lose some atrocious games already this season. They are 3-5. Yeah, they have Joe Burrow, but I mean, I don't know how much I can say about the Philadelphia Eagles because I'm just not sold on how good a football team they are. They're inconsistent, and I just think the 9 teams remaining on this list are at a different caliber of team than the Eagles are. At number 9, we have the Eagles' divisional opponent, the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders got a win in Week 8 thanks to a crazy Hail Mary against the Chicago Bears, allowing Jaden Daniels to win the matchup between first overall and second overall pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. And while it did take a Hail Mary for the Commanders to win that game, that didn't mean they weren't clearly the better team all game. Yeah, they couldn't get into the end zone. That might be a bit of an issue, but you know, the Chicago Bears do have a fairly good defense, so you can't knock it too much. Either way, though, the Washington Commanders were the better team in that game. They still look really good on offense. Their defense is surprisingly good. Like, I don't think it's a great defense, but it's a much better defense than anyone anticipated, myself included. And so with a 6-2 record, which, damn, who had the Commanders going 6-2 this season? But either way, with a 6-2 record, they absolutely belong here at number 9 in our power rankings. At number 8, also at 6-2, dropping 2 spots from where they were in the power rankings last week, we have the Houston Texans. Yes, I know the Texans won this past week, but they beat the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson by 3 points. That means even though they're 2-0 against the Colts this season, they won those 2 games by a combined total of 5 points, both of which Anthony Richardson started in. Again, if the Colts had started Joe Flacco with what we've seen from games where they start Joe Flacco, I might be willing to acknowledge that that would be a tough matchup, and getting a win either way is good for the Texans. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Texans have not convinced me that they are a dominant team. They are getting wins, and yes, they are missing Nico Collins, who should be back soon. But they also likely just lost Stephon Diggs for the year. We'll have to see what that injury turns into, but I'm guessing it's going to be a torn ACL or something that's going to knock him out for the season. And so their receiving core is banged up. Their running game has been really good, but CJ Stroud has been hit or miss. I don't think their defense is anything special, at least their passing defense. And so their 6-2 record is really good, and I expect them to have a very good record by the end of the season because their divisional opponents are the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans. And when you get to play 2 games against each of those teams, you should finish with a pretty good record. But still, I'm not sold on the Houston Texans overall. And so I've dropped them 2 spots to number 8. Maybe they can prove me wrong. They've done it a little bit already this season compared to where I had them to start the season. But I still think they're a little fraudulent in spite their record. Also, I'm going to add a little bit of a side note here for the Texans. Literally as I'm recording this, I just got a notification that Stephon Diggs does have a torn ACL and will be out for the season. So again, this is why the Texans are 8. At number 7, moving up 1 spot from where they were in Week 8, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team has been really good with Russell Wilson at quarterback. Yeah, they didn't look as dominant against the Giants as they did against the Jets, but I mean, I do think the Giants are a better team than the Jets, so that kind of makes sense. Either way, in the second half especially, the Pittsburgh Steelers looked like a much, much better team than the New York Giants. Their offense looks like it can run the ball, they can pass the ball. I mean, there was a touchdown taken away from George Pickens where he literally got the touchdown, and there was a face mask by the offensive lineman, but it didn't even impact the play. And then there was another touchdown pass to George Pickens where he literally double tapped his one foot, but just couldn't get his other foot down. Imagine if those 2 touchdowns go through. All of a sudden, we're looking at another domination from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they were the better team in this game by a significant margin. I think the scoreline was closer than the game actually indicated in terms of who was the better team. And with this good a defense, I think the Steelers absolutely belong here at number 7. They have impressed me this season. I think they could be an 11-12 win squad when all is said and done because of how good they look. And so moving up 1 spot from number 8 to 7 just makes sense to me. At number 6, we have the Minnesota Vikings moving down 2 spots after a loss on Thursday Night Football to the Los Angeles Rams. I'm still holding the Vikings a little higher than some teams, even though the last few teams we've seen do have now a better record than the Vikings at 6-2 compared to 5-2. But the Vikings looked really good in those 5 wins. They lost to the Detroit Lions, who have not even showed up on this list, on a last-second field goal. And yeah, they lost on Thursday Night Football to the Los Angeles Rams. But Thursday Night Football is always a little bit of a crapshoot. It's always tough to tell who's going to win those games. And so I'm a little hesitant to knock the Vikings down much further than these 2 spots. But if they have a close game against a bad team or they lose another one, don't be surprised if they fall to low top 10 or maybe even just outside top 10, depending on how some other teams do in our rankings. The worst thing that happened to the Vikings in that matchup is they likely lost out on some of the trades they were going for. Coming into this last week's Thursday Night Football game, one of the big rumors was that the Vikings were going to look to move Darnold in some picks to get guys like Matt Stafford or maybe Cooper Kupp or maybe both from the Los Angeles Rams. However, a loss on Thursday Night Football to the Rams moved the Rams to 3-4 when every other team in the division is 4-4, and they're going to be playing the Seahawks next week, meaning that the Rams could very easily be right back into the divisional race in the NFC West, and they are getting significantly healthier now that some of their main guys are returning. On the flip side, the Minnesota Vikings, now at 5-2 and in 3rd place in the NFC North, might not be so willing to make a big purchase at the trade deadline to improve their roster, especially when they still do have a lot of young guys in tow. Like, Sam Darnold is not the future of this team. That's J.J. McCarthy, which is why the trade with the Rams made so much sense, because it could get you a better quarterback in Matt Stafford, potentially get you Cooper Kupp on rentals, make your team significantly better, and move on from a quarterback that you don't really have long-term intentions for anyway. All of that being said, though, the Vikings still have a lot going for them. They're going to get TJ Hawkinson back, which is basically a trade deadline acquisition. They still have receivers like Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Their defense is still great. Sam Darnold has continued to look good, even in these losses. It hasn't been on account of him. It's just been on account of the other teams they're playing against playing a little bit better than the Vikings. And so the Vikings still belong here at number 6. I'm not going to knock them down too much, but let's see how they do in the coming weeks to see where they're going to end up, because this is the team I have the least confidence in, just because it's tough to know if those 5 weeks were a bit of a mirage and they are more of a mid-team, or if this is an elite team who just had a couple of tough matchups and bad weeks. At number 5, we have the Baltimore Ravens at 5-3, moving down 2 spots from where they were on our power rankings in week 8. The Baltimore Ravens have the worst record of any team in our top 10 at this point in the season. And so you might ask why they're at number 5, but if you've watched the Baltimore Ravens play football, you would not be asking that question. The tough thing for the Ravens is they have lost 2 games to some frankly bad teams. They lost to the Browns, and I know I talked about how the Browns are a little bit better with Jameis than they were with Deshaun Watson, but the Ravens should have still been able to handle the Browns. Let's be clear. That should have been an easy handling for them with how good this team is supposed to be. The Ravens also lost to the Raiders, which was a pathetic loss back in week 2 of this season. And so they have 2 really bad losses. And their other loss to the Chiefs is, fine, that happens, and it was at the last minute of the game. But on the flip side, in the 5 wins the Ravens have had, they haven't just looked good. They have looked dominant. They looked like the best team in the NFL during those 5 weeks. The problem is their offense is really, really good. Lamar Jackson is fantastic. Derrick Henry looks like a man possessed at the running back position. Their receivers are doing what they need to do. It's no individual guy, but Bateman is much improved. Likely and Andrews doing what they need to when they need to. And so we can talk about the Baltimore Ravens as a really good team, but the inconsistency is why I have to knock them down here to number 5 in our rankings. At number 4, at 6-2, moving up 3 spots from last week in the power rankings, it's the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills had those 2 tough weeks where they lost 2 games in a row, falling to 3-2, and it did kind of feel like the sky was falling for a lot of Bills fans. But since then, they've won 3 straight, they've moved to 6-2. Josh Allen is currently the front runner for MVP. They added Amari Cooper, who basically did nothing this past week, but it didn't matter. They still absolutely dominated in their game and got another easy win under their belt. The Buffalo Bills look great. Their division is pathetic with the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots, so they should be able to literally cruise to the division title and a first-round home game in the playoffs. All told, this team has a good, not great defense, but a very, very good offense that is predicated on the run game. And we've already talked about this. The Bills have 3 very good running backs, and even if James Cook goes down, I absolutely think Ray Davis can fill in that role more than adequately. And so, as long as Josh Allen is here and doing his thing, the Buffalo Bills are one of the elite teams in the NFL, and so they're here at number 4 on our list. At number 3, also at 6-2, moving up 2 spots from where they were on the power rankings this past week, we have the Green Bay Packers. Yes, the Green Bay Packers barely, and I mean barely, beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they move up 2 spots because the Baltimore Ravens, who were at 3 last week, and the Minnesota Vikings, who were at 4 last week, both lost their games, allowing the Green Bay Packers to leapfrog them in our power rankings. Yes, Jordan Love had an injury. They're going to be going against the Lions. We don't even know if Jordan Love is going to be playing. And while Malik Willis is undefeated on the season, I don't think a Malik Willis-led Packers squad will be able to beat the Detroit Lions. At least I hope so as a Lions fan. I would be devastated if the Packers won if Malik Willis is starting. But either way, the Packers have been great, and losing to the Lions is no shame. Plenty of teams have done it. Plenty of good teams have done it. And I expect teams to continue to do it as the season rolls on because the Lions are just a really good football team. But so are the Packers. Their losses have been to tough opponents. They've beaten some very tough opponents too. They lost to the Vikings and the Eagles, both of whom are in this top 10. They beat teams like the Houston Texans, and so this is a solid football team. If Jordan Love is healthy, they're going to be very good. They got players all over the offensive skill positions, and so they move up here at number 3. It might feel a little high to some people, but hey, this is a good team. And at number 2, 6-1, holding pat from last week and basically holding pat for many weeks in a row because this team is not moving on these power rankings. It's the Detroit Lions. They absolutely dominated the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. Jared Goff threw for less than 100 yards, and the Lions still put up 52 points. That's absolutely insane. I have never seen a stat line like that in my life. It's crazy. Like, just think about that. Not even a 2-to-1 yards to points conversion. Like, I can't remember any game where that's ever happened. Because usually if teams put up like 50 points, like those really big point totals, the quarterbacks throw for like 300 plus yards. You don't throw for 85 yards putting up 52 points. But that just shows you how good the Lions are. They can beat you in a defensive showdown. We've seen that a few times this season. They can beat you in a shootout. We've seen that this season. They can beat you with great special teams. We've seen that this season. They can beat you in the pass. They can beat you in the run. This team can seemingly do it all, and even without Aiden Hutchinson, they are one of the best teams in the National Football League and absolutely belong here at number 2. And in many previous seasons, this would be good enough for the number 1 ranking in our power rankings. But this is not any season, because this season at number 1, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, who are also undefeated at 7-0. The Kansas City Chiefs, again, I'm not going to talk about this for long because we all know what they've been like this season. Patrick Mahomes has been mediocre. The team looks beatable each week. But it doesn't matter that they look beatable. What matters is that they're apparently not beatable. This team is 7-0. They're undefeated. They've won some pretty tough games in this stretch, beating teams like the Baltimore Ravens already on the season. And so the Kansas City Chiefs are really good. They should have no problem making the playoffs, and I expect them to be the team to beat come the playoffs. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes might not look as good this season, but I am not selling on Patrick Mahomes until I see him in the playoffs. Because even last year, he looked pretty mediocre throughout a lot of the regular season. And then the playoffs came and he was Patrick Mahomes. And so the Chiefs are going to stay at 1, at least until they take an L. I don't care how the wins come, and I don't care how well a team like the Lions does. The Chiefs are number 1 until they take an L, and then we can revisit. And so that's it for week 9 of our NFL power rankings, but it's not it for the video because as always, at the end of our power ranking video, we pick our Thursday Night Football matchup, and this week we have the Houston Texans visiting the New York Jets, and oh god, we got another New York Jets primetime game. Kill me now. I already talked about how the Houston Texans are going to be missing both Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins for this week until Nico Collins is eligible to come back come week 10. But they're going against the New York Jets, and the Jets' only wins are against the Patriots and the Titans. And so while it might be in New York, And Thursday Night Football is always a bit of a crapshoot because it's all down to who's prepared and who's not. You got to know I'm picking the Texans in this one. I expect the Texans to win. I expect them to go to 7-2. They should be able to easily handle this Jets team. There is a world where they lose, again, just because it's a Thursday Night Football crapshoot, but come on. The Texans want to run the football anyway. I think they'll be able to against the Jets. The Jets look so much worse without Saleh calling the defense, and yeah, Texans win this game. Let's move on. And so now that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Remember to stay tuned for Saturday when we come out with our weekly pick'ems for week 9. And remember, if you like this video, leave a comment and like down below. Help us out, help us grow. I'll see you all next time. Peace!